We screeched back into the hotel's parking lot with plenty of time to spare. Still didn't keep me from kicking the van door open and charging in through the front line like a linebacker. "Alright, which one of you cocksuckers sent me to goddamn Voldemort's house?" I yelled at Leslie and Pete, bursting through the door. There was a moment of silence between the two before Pete broke down in laughter and fell out behind the desk. As soon as he started to pull himself back up off the floor, I was on his ass. "You fucking dick-stained son of a b-" I started until I glanced behind me to see Ina had been the one to snatch me up and had the tips of my boots dusting the tiles on the floor. "I'm sorry, Mr. Pete. He's had a rough day." She apologized for me, holding me off to the side like a toddler. "Jesus Christ, I'll take some of whatever you're on," I said to her as she walked beside me back to our room. "How'd you even do that? You're like half my size." "I'm from a warrior species. We've been evolving to be as perfect for combat as possible since millions of years before your species existed," she said, finally turning to look at me again once she opened the door to our room. "Then what the hell are you doing here?" I asked. "Sounds like you should be dominating some kind of interdimensional cage match or something." "I do not like to fight. Where I am from, they put people like me to death unless we escape before they find out," she answered grimly. Her voice still carried the same bell-like tone, though. "Oh shit, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up any touchy business," I apologized. "It's okay, Travis," she said. "I like it here. They don't make me do any fighting. I get to do nice things, like clean rooms and escort guests to places." "Just my luck. I get a genetic Spartan for a partner and she doesn't like to fight. Just my luck." Too bad the Mark and Hawk guy and the blue chick next door didn't share the sentiment, I thought, as I rubbed my temple. I followed her across the room to the weird-looking black trunk she kept next to her bed. She opened it, revealing several weapons of various shapes and sizes that looked to be made of some kind of bone. Jawbones from what it seemed, because they had all these rows of teeth running along them somewhere. The handles were wrapped around some kind of tarnished red material with black stains. "Holy shit, those look fucking brutal!" I exclaimed, looking down at the creepy tools. "But why bone? Seems like a bad thing to make a weapon out of if your whole species was evolved for fighting." "There are several creatures where I come from with special bone," she explained. "They may seem the same as normal bones at first, but they're a composite of two main elements. Once they are carved into the shape we want, we heat the bone. This burns out the one element that makes the bone soft and easy to work. Once it's gone, the element that remains joins together in a certain way and becomes very hard and strong like metal. I'm not sure exactly, but this is how it basically works." She then picked up one of the weapons that looked like a huge leaf-shaped knife and swung it at one of the metal coat hooks in the wall. It pinged against the hook, and in a split second later, half the hook was clattering across the floor in our room. "Jesus hell, that's some serious shit," I said, picking up the piece of the coat hook off the floor. "I forget that things don't work the same where you guys are from," I said, tossing the hook onto my bed. "Yes, these are still important to me. You must raise and slaughter the animals, then butcher them and make the weapons from them yourself. I was forced to do that, and that's when I left the first chance I had. If I refused, I would have been killed, but it broke my heart, as your people would say," she explained again. "You don't have to tell me all this," I tried to stop her. "Not if it's too hard on you or something." "No, we should know as much about each other as we can, if we're going to be partners. I should know about you as well." Well, I mean, there isn't much to me, really," I said evasively, trying to dodge having to bring up my gambling addiction. "What brought you to the hotel?" "Son of a bitch." So, after an hour of explaining the concept of an addiction, which her culture neither understands nor her species exhibits apparently, I managed to segue into the events that led me to the hotel that night. And for the sake of filling in some gaps I might have left at the beginning of the story, it's worth mentioning that I had borrowed a lot of money from a loan shark to join a big table card game that night. But instead of making money, I lost every penny, and then some. I had to give them everything I had to keep the guys at the table from breaking my fucking legs in the alley. Never mind that loan shark was probably going to go tossing my corpse in the ocean by the end of the week. Because there was no chance in hell I was going to be able to pay him back. And on top of that, I was way ass behind on my rent. I remember thinking at the time about all my shit on the sidewalk, being picked through by tweakers. But instead of the judgment I was expecting, Ina just giggled a little. "What's funny?" I asked in response. "Do you still not understand the name of this place?" she asked me, still giggling. Do you not see the pattern yet? Nah, not really. Oh well then. You see, this place can only be found by a person who meets one of two conditions, she told me. The first is that the person already knows about it in some way. Someone has to either show them or tell them where to find the entrance. Or the other, a person can only find this place on the worst day of their life. Or to be more clear, the day where they feel the most broken and hopeless they have ever felt. Once they have nothing left and nowhere else to go, they can find their way to an entrance if it's close enough. So, this place knew that I didn't have anything left and took me in? I asked. What happens when I'm finished paying off the I began to say, but I was interrupted by a thunderous bang on the door that made me cat jump about 4 inches off the floor. Ina did that glinting walk of hers over to the door and opened it. Hello, neighbor! That pork and stork man's voice boomed in the small room, damn near deafening us. We have something for you, the blue lady, whose name I still didn't know, said, sticking her head through the opening. Have... for me? I asked, caught off guard by the statement. Yep, move, she said as she forced her way in, the orange titan close behind, carrying a trunk similar to Ina's that sat open in the corner. He sat the trunk down next to my bed and stated proudly, Some of your things from home. Home? What? I yelled, sliding up the trunk on my knees and sliding it open. They had gone out and got most of my treasured possessions. How did you even... You know, I don't even care, I said as I ran over and hugged the two, my grandfather's wristwatch clutched tightly in my hand. As I stepped back, wiping tears and some snot off my face, the blue woman spoke again. I figured this might make up for, the concussion. She said as the giant overshadowed her, smiling down on everyone in the room, his fists resting proudly on his hips. After a while, we had all moved into the common area, and we're all sitting around a table eating our respective foods. Oh yeah, I didn't tell you how that works. It being explained to me fits in here somewhere, but I can't remember exactly where it is. Anyway, you can use the money that you make here to go to the market at the base of the library's elevator and buy all kinds of food. They even have charts that say which foods can be eaten by which species and which can't. There's things that taste better than anything you could find anywhere on Earth. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some stuff down there that tastes like sweaty-ass cooked and juicy dumpster over a pile of burning diapers. But some of it's really good. Anyway, as we sat there eating and burying the proverbial hatchet, Leslie comes walking up. Yeah, you four will do, he said, fingers resting on his chin like some detective or something. We'll do what? I asked suspiciously. Looks like we got a crawly that got out somewhere and started multiplying. Got a neighborhood in New York not too far from the hotel entrance where all the pets are going missing. We need you 4 Teletubbies to go take care of it before they eat someone. A guy already hit one with his van. We don't need this kind of shit show. So move out, chosen ones. We already have a hotel van with all the necessary equipment waiting outside, he ordered. Ina, you know the drill. You got the best eyes, so keep a lookout for angels whilst they do the heavy lifting, he said to her as she walked by, to which she responded with a nod. As we made our way out of the entrance, they all began to assume their respective human disguises as they passed through the doorway. Vort, as I was now allowed to call him, could have passed for an NFL linesman. I asked him, hey, what's the deal about angels? Even the manager said it was on site with him, but that was about in the same breath of him saying the hotel doesn't screw with in-dimensional stuff. What gives? Angels are really bad about trying to abduct and experiment with creatures from other dimensions. They want to spread the faith as far as possible, even as far as other dimensions, so they're always trying to get their hands on anything from the hotel. The blue woman who introduced herself as Zex whilst we were eating explained. Keeping things from other dimensions safe is part of the job. The only way you'll be able to tell them apart from others like you is they'll have wing tattoos on both of their pinky fingers, Ina added. I can see their different body heat and electrical fields, so I can tell before you can. Oh, well, that's handy, I said as we approached the van with something hitched to the back. A wood chipper. It had a wood chipper on it. This was going to be messy. After a few minutes of driving, we pulled into the infested neighborhood. So, how are we supposed to find these things? I asked as Vort slid the side door open. Whack! As soon as the door was open, one of the large night crawlers jumped out of nowhere and latched onto his face, knocking him back into the van. My stomach lurched from both surprise and from the sound of him crushing the giant bug between his hands like a styrofoam cup, as he looked up at me from the floorboard and said, Found him! We all filed back through the front entrance exactly 12 hours and 34 minutes later, covered head to fucking toe with crawler guts and pieces of exoskeleton shrapnel. Tracking bug juice through the lobby, we all drug our feet straight for the showers. More specifically, the hot spring. "What the hell are you doing?" Zex asked as she noticed me picking up some rocks from the edge of the spring and throwing them at random places in the water. "Can't be too careful," I said, recalling my run-in with the creature from the Black Lagoon as I chucked another heavy stone into the steaming spring water. Then picked up a large pool net and poking around for a while before being satisfied there was nothing lurking underneath the surface. And there we all soaked for a good long while, as we tried to joke away the recent expedition. "That one had you halfway up the tree before I got to you. I've never heard a grown man make that noise before." Zex joked as she raised a blue leg out of the water and pantomimed. I really like the thesaurus, by the way. Pantomimed me being dragged upside down into a tree. "What about Vort? Remember you had like 20 on him at once and he started rolling around on the ground like it was on fire?" I responded, making everyone laugh even harder as I held my arm straight down beside me and rocked it back and forth like I was rolling. After that going for some time, we all climbed out, got dressed, and went back to the common room for another meal, hoping this one wouldn't be interrupted by a surprise bug extermination expedition. The next morning, as I stuck my head out of the 8C living area, I noticed a gloomy-looking man being led past me by several, people in the hotel uniforms, down into a labyrinth of halls I still didn't even attempt to explore. "What's his deal?" I asked Ina as she walked out behind me. "Oh, that is one of your world's vampires. Some do not choose to attack people and rather come here, where they learn to live with their new selves without hurting others. But of course they have to be isolated at first, for a little while, before they can join the rest of us." "Oh wow, so that was like a real vampire. He looked normal to me," I said to myself. "This place really is knockin' futz," I told Ina, whose face contorted into a begrudging grin. "Oh wait, I guess these things probably would have a hard time translating stupid stuff like that into other languages," I admitted, scratching the back of my head. No, I understood," she chuckled. "They work from the concepts your brain constructs as you form the words before you speak them, not by going from one language to another. So I understand that you're making a joke." "Well, isn't that just dandy?" I said, poking my own earpiece. "Most women that speak English can't even tell that I'm making a joke. They could really use one of these." As we checked the whiteboard in the custodial room to see our room schedules, someone suddenly came bursting out of the central room, a large gash running down his leg that poured thick, oily blood all over the floor.
"Something went bad in there,"
he yelled at us before we rushed over to his aid.
"What happened?"
I shouted at him as he started to black out.
"Something was inside one of the guests, but it's out now,"
he groaned before losing consciousness.
"Trouble! 8th floor!"
Ina shouted into the speaker that connected to the front desk, but before she could get a hand off the button, I was already dashing through the door and into the room behind it. I heard Ina try to call before I kicked the door shut behind me and slid the cudgel out of its holster. My eyes immediately fell on what the man was talking about. There was a corpse of something on the bed. Something mutilated beyond recognition. A dark figure stood hunched over it as it pulled and snatched on something inside the dead body. All at once, a loud snap cracked through the room as what it had been pulling at broke free. I stood in shock as I watched the creature take the fresh bone and it just ripped from the body and rake the remaining flesh off in the corner of the nightstand. Once it was done, it inspected the bone and placed it on its other arm, which began to mold and wriggle over it, giving form and rigidity to the once shapeless tentacle-like limb. As I looked closer, I could see more and more stolen bones, which peeked out from behind the sickly black of the creature's flesh. Once it was satisfied with its newest addition, it turned to face me, still motionless in front of the door. It took a single step towards me, and that's all that it took to spur me back into reality. I leveled my cudgel as a spear, and the head shot forward into the monster's chest in the blink of an eye, stopping it dead. But not for long. Once it realized what had happened, its entire body began to shake to the point of vibrating. A split second later, it lunged at me, allowing the long shaft of the spear to run straight through it in an attempt to reach me. Thinking fast, I broke the very end of the spear off, ducking as I changed the broken piece to as large of a blade as I could. I hacked down on the thing's face as it passed me by, slamming into the door behind me with enough force to crack the wood. I rolled over on the floor to face the creature, whose lifeless body now laid in front of the entrance to the room, half its head missing. Oh my god, I can't believe that worked. I sighed, laying my back down against the floor as I heard the sound of my co-workers trying to push the body out of the way to enter the room. We have a very serious problem here. The manager spoke as me, Ina, and several others stood outside of his office, from where his figure formed on the wall next to his office. That was a very dangerous parasite. One that grows in the soft tissues of its victims before evacuating and using its victims' bones for its own. Not only that, but I now have reason to believe this was done to our guest deliberately. He all shifted in place. But the worst news, so to speak, is that I suspect the one who did this may have infected others as well. Which means you all have to find out who might have been infected as soon as we determine who the culprit is. So we might have to deal with more of those things? I asked nervously. I'm afraid so. I don't think we'll be able to get everyone before they reach maturity, the manager answered. Right now, we're trying to mitigate a catastrophe and keep it contained in the hotel. Ugh, what a dreadful organism. I'm glad that, in real life, parasites are so few and far between. Or are they? Around 40% of all animals on Earth are parasitic organisms. True. There's even a species of wasp you may have heard of called the tarantula hawk. It lays its egg in a paralyzed but still very much alive tarantula, and when that egg hatches, it slowly eats away at the living tarantula, leaving its most vital organs last to prolong the freshness of its host's flesh. Pretty neat.